Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&As, so let's get to it. Alright, first question. What is the least amount of water one can drink and still consume an adequate amount? I've done the whole drinking a gallon of water thing before, and I'm over it. I'd rather drink the minimum amount to cover my bases and move on with my life. Truth be told, it really depends on how much you sweat and how much you exercise. That's a big factor. You know, people always act like there's some minimum amount or ideal amount of hydration. There probably is, but the human body will adapt to how much you take in. Now, obviously, you don't want to get dehydrated. Dehydration isn't good for performance. Dehydration is not good for your health, but the majority of people probably don't need a gallon a day. Now, by that same token, if you want to drink a gallon of water a day and you're physically active, it's probably not going to harm you in any way to do so. It's not a bad thing. It isn't a bad thing. Just some people might not want to pee that much, and some people might not want to pack around and have to drink that much water. Personal preference. You know what? Personal preference. If you're someone who does a lot of cardio, though, or you train in a really hot gym and you sweat a lot, a gallon a day might be reasonable. If you train in a fairly cool environment, you don't break a massive sweat when you're training, you don't break a massive sweat doing a lot of cardio, half of that's probably fine. In fact, you know, the normal information of 8-ounce glasses of water for basic health probably isn't bad advice either. So 8 glasses of water through the day. Perfectly reasonable. And you know what? People say, well, what about active people? Well, all healthy people are active people. Being sedentary is unhealthy. So the general medical assumption there is that you are physically active. But again, obviously, that number can go up higher than 8 glasses depending upon how physically active you are. But, you know, some people might overthink how active they are. People who don't do a lot of conditioning and cardio work probably don't need as much water. Meaning if weightlifting is your primary thing and you're only lifting weights for 3 hours a week, that's your weightlifting time, 3 hours spread throughout the week. You're not necessarily training in a hot gym where you're sweating a lot. Not a big deal, but someone who has a physical labor-intensive job out in the heat probably does need a gallon of water every day. So it really is relative. I'd say the biggest factor in how much water you probably need to drink depends on how much you sweat throughout the day. And obviously that's going to change in different times of year. It's going to change depending on how you train, what your physical activity looks like, what your job looks like. But if you don't sweat a lot, I think half a gallon of water a day, drinking half that amount, probably perfectly acceptable for your overall health and performance. All right, next question. If I do 1 to 2 hours of exercising 6 times a week, but the rest of the day is spent sitting in front of a computer, which includes my day job, am I considered sedentary as long as I exercise 1 to 2 hours? Almost daily, I'm fine. I usually do 2 hours of weightlifting 3 times a week and 30 minutes to an hour of liss cardio also about 3 times a week on separate days. However, other than occasionally going to the shop or going out on the weekends, the rest of my day is spent sitting. He basically has a desk job. All right, brother. Yeah, there is something to be said for people who do very, very little exercise and just have a desk job the rest of the time, or they drive for a living or whatever. But when you're talking about an hour or more of physical activity, of actual exercising every single day, you are absolutely not sedentary. I don't care if you sit on your ass for 22 hours a week. Or a day, 22 hours a day either in bed or sitting on your ass. When you are as physically active as you say you do in terms of exercise, you're absolutely not sedentary. That is more than enough to offset any of the negatives of a desk job. And that's what people need to remember. Yeah, physical jobs make you less sedentary. Someone who has a really physically demanding job could probably lift weights 3 times a week for 30 minutes and achieve optimal ideal fitness. Someone with a desk job needs more cardio. They need more physical activity. But you're talking about lifting weights for 6 hours a week and doing cardio 3 days a week. That will 100% offset any of the negative effects that you would think of being sedentary from a desk job, other than maybe hamstring tightness and some of that. So you probably need to do a little more hamstring stretching and stuff like that to help with that. But overall, you are the exact opposite of sedentary. Yeah, you don't have a physically active job, but anyone who's averaging an hour or more a day of exercise, that will more than offset any sedentary job you have. You're doing just fine, brother. You keep doing what you are doing. All right, next question. Jason, what do you think of lifting heavy, stodgy objects like boxes? Are they better than barbells? I'm a fairly strong guy with a 200 kilogram squat, 170 kilogram bench press, but seem to lack that real world strength. And at my point of training, should I just now focus on lifting them and not barbells? Thanks as always. Brother, no, don't quit lifting barbells. You need to maintain your strength on your stuff. But there is something to be said for lifting bulky, heavy objects. The thing you need to remember, the only lifts you listed were your squat and your bench press. Squat and bench press are very fixed exercises with minimal grip and other things involved. There's very little other balance involved. So yeah, they can build a tremendous strength base. Those are both good exercises for athletes. But if you aren't doing things like power cleans and deadlifts and stuff also, yeah, your real world strength could suffer because you're not having to manipulate objects. Now, do I think lifting all these boxes could benefit your overall strength? Yeah, absolutely. It will maximize that strength base that you've built. But this falls under the area of basically GPP work. This is general physical preparedness type work because you're talking about lifting different awkward objects and stuff to build all those stabilizers and grip and everything else that you might not be getting out of the exercises that you're using for your general buildup of strength and size. And it can only help with that. But you know what could help also? It doesn't have to be boxes. Any GPP work can help. Various general physical preparedness, whether it's sled drags or loaded carries, farmer's walks, things like that can all help. But yeah, you could walk around picking up awkward objects. You could have a couple big heavy boxes or engine in your backyard, an old engine block, some big rocks, whatever in your backyard that you could pick up and carry and move around. It's general physical preparedness work. And that will help make you just overall more fit and have strength that carries over to a lot of applications while you still build 80 to 90% of your normal strength doing your barbell work. But what I would also add in, because again, you only mentioned the squat and the bench press, maybe you should consider some other more complex lifts that are more athletic in nature. Meaning if you're really concerned about this real world strength, why don't you work on doing some extra power cleans? Throw some power cleans in every now and then, maybe some clean and push press. All right, these exercises are going to take a lot of that strength base that you've built on these basic lifts, and they are going to give you strength through a variety of different planes of motion. The more awkward lifts that are explosive in nature that require you to move objects through multiple planes sometimes, because a power clean is a multi-phase exercise. The push press has a couple different phases. You're not just doing one basic movement. There's two movements or more combined into some big, heavy exercises. Those will also help you as far as you're talking about with that real world strength. And I think you'll find with what you squat and bench press already, you'll very, very quickly develop that other strength with just a little bit of work, some sort of general physical preparedness. It'll be pretty easy for you actually with just a month or two of work, or even some tire flips. All right, next question. Hi Jason, I've had good success developing strength using pause reps as you often advocate. I understand how eliminating the stretch reflex in certain lifts focus more muscle fiber recruitment for acceleration from a dead stop. I'm curious as to if the reverse could be applied to the deadlift with any benefits. The deadlifts never really use a stretch reflex, so what about doing deficit deadlifts but not allowing the weights to quite touch the floor at the bottom before shooting right back up into the concentric? Talk about doing a deficit. All right, brother. We don't need to develop a new exercise for this. One already exists. It's called the Romanian deadlift. With a Romanian deadlift, you're focused on the eccentric and actually getting a stretch reflex in the hamstrings. In fact, I'll go so far as to say the Romanian deadlift for someone whose hamstrings seem to be the weak link in their actual deadlift might actually be really beneficial for you, because the Romanian deadlift is a fantastic hypertrophy exercise for the hamstrings. With the Romanian deadlift, it's the opposite. On a normal deadlift, it's concentric base. You're focused on lifting it off the floor. That's the main movement. Lowering it becomes optional. Lowering it slowly becomes optional. With the Romanian deadlift, you unrack a weight and walk it out. And you lower it first, and then with fairly straight knees, so that before it gets to the floor, your hamstrings get tight. And when your hamstrings get tight, you snap the weight back up like a rubber band. You use them to move it back up. There's tutorials on it. I might even have a tutorial on it. I don't remember if I do or not. But the Romanian deadlift will give you that eccentric and stretch reflex you're looking for out of the normal deadlift. If you want an accompanying exercise, it won't be as big of an overall developer, but it will work that stretch reflex. It will give you the eccentric training that you're looking for with a stretch reflex, and it will help bring up your hamstrings because that's the muscle that gets the stretch reflex on that. A lot of the muscles involved in the deadlift, there aren't actually exercises to get a stretch reflex on them, but the hamstrings there is, and again, it's called the Romanian deadlift. So for you, if you wanted to do that, just perform the Romanian deadlift. It'll give you exactly what you're looking for without having to create a deficit on the floor or work with all this other awkward stuff. And it's already a well understood exercise, a well established exercise. So go try out some Romanian deadlifts. That would be my recommendation. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 3.